Season 4, welcome to the library, and this episode of Podcast of the Realms. I am David, otherwise known as the Recorder, and somewhere around here I have a Carmen.
Hi, I'm here, hiding in metaphorical books.
And today we will be going through episodes 9 through 12 of Series 1 of Intro to the Realms. How are you doing today, Carmen?
I'm doing really good. I'm really excited to go over these. There's some delicious tidbits that I really want to talk about. And as you listeners always know, you are welcome to send your comments and questions. Just put them in the video below and we will go over them during these recordings. But for now, until then, we just get to wander my mind and David's mind about what he was thinking during these videos. So I'm excited.
Alrighty, and let's just jump right into it, starting with episode 9. Episode 9 was the third of our Divine Discussion series, where we actually start getting into the nitty-gritty of the who's who, starting at the top of the list. And
Who's
take it away, Carmen.
What's, and exactly where are we going next? We discussed most of the V's and it kind of just gives a brief overall of what they are. The video kind of opens up with Valor and kind of those guys. But my question is about Corin, who is told to be the traitor. Now, we're told that we don't have much information or history about who he is. My first question is, will we ever hear about a story? Will we ever find it and know it?
Oh, it is officially mostly scrubbed. There are plenty of people who are far old enough to remember the celebration parades of the Valors with Corin right at the head of it. Oh, his history is known by those that are old enough. It's just not spoken of in polite company. And yes, it will come into play.
So we will hear about it later is what I'm hearing.
Oh yes, he is not gone. He is just, let's say, his path through life took some turns that none, not even he, would have been happy with.
Okay, I'm excited because, whenever you hear noise about a traitor who isn't being spoken of, you're like, I'm here for the tea. So, going on to the Voids was the next people that you guys talked about.
Yep. Valor's the Void. And as a note before we move on to the Void, the Valors themselves, their history and how they got to where they are, is a 6-part series in Series 3 of Intro to the Realm. So that has been expanded on a bit more.
For those of you who are interested, go ahead and hop right over to that after you are finished with this listening.
Absolutely. Listen to both at the same time if you can. Alright, moving on to the Void.
We talk about Body Knock Long Tool. Now, First of all, where did the name come from?
I gotta be careful with how I answer this question.
YouTube and all.
No, actually.
Oh?
Components of the name were drawn from source materials available to the character creator at the time. Official materials. Yes, Long Tool is a common name within tropes for little people, especially the tinkering type.
Okay. Interesting.
Not that anyone listening will be able to see, but there is a traditional way Body Knock is to be introduced. He is Body Knock Long Tool.
Excessive hand gestures in there. I love that.
Compensation, complimentary, whatever, but moving on.
But you said a term when explaining about this guy very briefly, and I hadn't heard of it briefly, or I haven't heard of it before. you said that he guided the fiddle touched. What is
yeah.
that?
Well, the fiddle touch. Take the concept of always wanting to create something new, wanting to tinker, fiddle, and make better or make more interesting, or I can do that better, or why don't you do it like this? And now give it a metaphysical impetus and the strangest of luck to not get fucking killed by your shit. And you have the fiddle touch.
So ADHD on steroids.
ADHD backed by magic. Kinda. It is thought to be... The origin of it is as to now unknown. Speculated to maybe have been a curse at one point for someone who got overly curious, but not defined to a single race. There are fiddle touch gnomes, there are fiddle touch elves, there are fiddle touch halflings and human. It's just this drive, and it's almost like you can tell a fiddle touch from a mad genius. Because the mad genius, you can break down what he does and put it to the normal magic scientific understanding, and everything fits. You can see a chain of insane progression. A fiddle touch, you throw it on there, it's like they skip 14 principles and 3 orders of laws. But it does work!
We don't quite know how.
Well,
but
we
it
know
does.
how. We have no idea how they figured it out that this would work. Who knew that turning a water tap on in Who Knows Ya while dancing in What the Fuck Ya would make it rain in my backyard? But they've done it 4 times in a row. That's the fiddle touch.
I like that. Do we ever meet any characters or like any of the characters that we have in our story that are fiddle touched?
The 2 halfling twins in Sarge's unit
Okay.
are fiddle touched.
Ooh.
The dwarf is there to keep them in line.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of their character development sense now.
Yeah, the whole implanting a humor module into...
Make sure they don't touch anything until I say so.
Yeah.
Oh, I
They
like
never
that.
mean bad. They can just make it better.
In one way or another. You know, it's better to them.
It's more entertaining. You can see it at night. It's supposed to be a stealth tank. But yes, those are the fiddle touched. And Body Knock himself was a fiddle touched. So
I would love to look forward to just hearing the many wild different things that were created by the fiddle touched, and like even just their little offhanded adventures on how they did something. That'd be so entertaining.
they are a hoot. We will see more of them in the future.
All right. So going on, I would like to look at the victors.
Alright, hopping down to the victors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. What's left of them?
So you say that. What's left of them? Do we ever hear what happened to them? Like in full detail? Do we have that out yet?
That is not out yet because each of them met their own end separately. It wasn't like they all died in an epic battle.
Mm-hmm.
The victors were the case of sometimes when you need to deal with some evil shit, fire does just great against fire. So let's throw a demon, a devil, a vampire, a renegade dark monk, and throw them at evil. And that was the victor. Beathanatus, better known as Eddie, met his own end by his own choice after his illustrious... To give Eddie all the fucking credit he is due, he was a major mover and shaker of the realm.
Okay.
Basically, when the quote-unquote Cold War between the various V's of who can get the fancier mortal servants happen. You know, good-natured competition. Let me hand out artifacts to mortals to make them better than yours. He was pretty much the one who started that by just going, oh, you gave them a nice gift, let me give them a fucking... Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But he was a major mover and shaker, and even with his passing, he was a mover and shaker. Let's see here. Pure Evil met his end sometime it is suspected he was killed during the attack on the necropolis when it got destroyed. Which he founded just after he attained godhood, and it basically... I'm not going to say Pure Evil was a terribly complex or deep character. He was designed to be pure evil. It kind of on the tin. The creator behind them was very blunt what they were going with. So they passed during that. The demon, the complement to Eddie, basically one side of evil and another side of evil. He basically, after getting his godhood and shit, went back down to the hellish realms and just fucking started carving his shit out.
Wow.
So technically he's there, but his duties are there. So he's one of the few V's that doesn't actually hang out in the halls of the V's in any way, but that's because his duties are there. He's not necessarily there to stop evil. No. He's there to make sure it's working for him and the rest of the realm.
Yes. Okay.
The mysterious dark monk, he isn't dead. And he might be a part of the finale episode of Series 3, which will be going over the Elder God. So we'll leave that where that is.
Intense staring.
So the rest of the victors, like I said, they found their ends. However, the position had to be on.
Yes.
So a Kalor the bartender, who is, depending on whose read of history you want to take, is either the laziest motherfucker in existence, the most studious motherfucker in existence, or everything is his fault. Because he is, let's just say that Her Majesty Genevieve Nodakir, Empress of the Gods, calls him Grandpa Kalor.
Oh dear.
And we'll leave it at he's a very old being who is technically newer to his godhood, but has been playing on this chessboard before most of these people were even born.
Speaking of this guy, what I would like to see kind of moving forward from this is more of his adventures. He sounds like a really cool character. Was he ever like someone that was individually played, or was he somebody that you created?
He was played in the very, very ancient proto-Jam'mar games back when Jam'mar was a 12-sided planet, like a D12. Like, all sorts of things. He was a legacy character I kept forward and turned into a NPC along the lines that he had grown in, and because he's been on camera, we have seen him.
Yes, we have.
Tell me where the coin is.
It's in your stand. It's in the staff. It's a yeah. I thought. Oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense. I want to hear about, again, kind of going back to the Fiddle Touch. Like, I want to hear the cute little adventures that they might have had not them together, but like that Caloris had, and that he has like just
Trust me, he will show up
fuck
quite
shit
a
up.
bit as we start going into more specific explorations of history.
Okay.
I've been trying to, with all the episodes I have been doing, trying to set the stage, trying to make sure that when I start going into full nerd mode and do nothing but telling story, that I'm not leaving anyone behind with a what the hell is that?
Okay.
So, as always, it is so important. If something does not make sense to you, please put a comment so I can either explain or point to the direction. Sometimes there are things I leave intentionally ambiguous for aha moments later. Other times, I'm mortal and I say things boom. So please, just ask the question so I can sort it out.
Yeah. Now, going on to the Vanquishers. Now,
yes.
the one I was most particularly interested in is Karthus. Karthus, and you described how he had recreated the Analar gun dance style of combat.
Correct.
I want to hear more about that, because that's
Okay.
really interesting, and we don't go over too much combat specifics yet at this point.
Correct. The Analar gun dance
mhm.
is actually going to be receiving a bit more spotlight on it through further entries about Han, as Han is particularly skilled in the gun dance. As a matter of fact, referring to Karthus, he was one of the Crystons Karthus consulted with while reconstructing and figuring out how to do the gun dance, because he had found a half-rotted instructional tome on the gun dance under his farm that he had dug up, and he dedicated himself to perfecting it because it called to him as a form of combat. And he's damn good at it too. It involves the total weaponization of a gun, basically of a ranged combat user's body, for the art of killing as many motherfuckers as quickly as possible while not getting killed yourself. I mean, it obviously takes some inspiration from, oh, dear God, brain, don't blank. What was that movie? Equilibrium. It does have some shades of that, but if you were to attempt to compare it to that, it is the natural evolution of such a concept when you add the ability to fly and not run out of ammo. Oh, and teleport. So it was designed by the Analar.
Yeah, who could do all those things.
Yes, but it is a historical note, the recorder would say, that there are no known Analar masters of the gun dance. And we'll just leave that there.
That makes me think. That makes me really excited for what more you have planned. And I'm gonna tuck that in the back of my head so we can touch on that later when you finally reveal to us what there is.
Oh yeah.
But that kind of goes into what other forms of combat is kind of specified and more so a creation that has happened in Jam'mR. It's like, where did you pull your inspiration of combat from? And like, what else is there interesting?
If we're going for, let's just go for the things we have seen on screen so far.
Yeah.
We have seen the gun dance via Han, which, while I know a great deal of it I have done without doing the second by second him dodging a bullet while shooting a bullet, I've allowed that to be played in the viewer's mind, because in my experience, this badass thing is happening people have such a great imagination. I'll let them fill in that point until I'm ready. I have a specific scene to show off his gun dance abilities. I've pretty much worked out. It's a matter of figuring out the best way to visualize and articulate it for the fan.
Okay.
But beyond the gun dance, which has its acclaim, I mean, it's considered the national pastime of the Christons is various forms of the gun dance. The fact that the Divine Family represents 4 versions of the gun dance in certain philosophies. Karthus being dual pistols, his wife Renly being a motherfucking sniper rifle that can shoot you from around the planet. Karthus' son Verisar being a blade and a gun. And then there's Vale, who just does 2 sabers and disappears in puffs of dust, and then people fall apart into 50 pieces. But their combat they all have incorporated the gun dance as part of it. So it is a popular form of combat amongst those that can pull it off, because they're the ability to have the mobility and honestly the power reserves to keep up the rate of fire required, because most Christons, especially those that follow the gun dance, for example, will have implanted or upgraded themselves to be able to produce large amounts of energy to be able to sustain their weapons fire.
Yeah.
Running out of a clip mid-dance is death.
Yeah.
So there is the analog of the fist that is very popularized in various Jam'mR medias as basically being the untouchable uber. This planet will blow up in 5 minutes because I looked at it wrong. Super powered art of combat. And to be fair, at the very pinnacle of the ways of the fist, there are people that can crack planets on a lazy afternoon. Most people get nowhere near that level of power, but they are ridiculously powerful. But by the time they get there, they're almost to a man so centered in the ways of reality that generally most masters or grandmasters of the way of the fist generally are just neutral entities. Like, if they see bullshit go down, they'll stop it, and they'll stop it dumb quick. But short of, the world's about to end, they're probably not going to take a side because they're past the petty bullshit. They have enlightened themselves, because the way of the analog fist, for analogs, not so transforming. But for a mortal, they are touching the edges of the power of grace at the highest level.
Wow.
It's a bit humbling and transformative.
Yeah, as one would.
They tend to be some of the chillest motherfuckers. But it's until you get to that point. And of course, we see the ways of the fist done by Tag. And Masnoa, part of Sarge's crew. If you notice, Sarge's Han had noticed a couple times she moves quicker than I remember. That's because of her heightened mastery of the way.
Okay.
Like, it's follows the trope of most martial arts of great practice and great repetition giving subtle but consistent gain. She's about 3/4 of the way through the path.
Okay.
But again, that is one of those things that many people say they try to follow, but very few ever get in the first step.
Okay.
Other ways of combat that are unique to... Well, it's not exactly combat, but many an elven royal or petty dispute has been settled over a good flighting.
Lighting?
It is a reference to an ancient, I think it was Greek. Basically, how they would debate back and forth with rhymes and verse. Yes, the Greeks had rap battles to decide things, and the elves do the same. Except they have magic to do their backing.
Oh my gosh!
Go ahead, look it up. I guarantee you. FYLTE. Flighty.
How do they usually end with the elves?
Fairly well, because, like any great debaters, the elves know that they're not trying to change the other performer's mind. It's the audience. So whoever wins the audience wins the flight. So, drunken nobles getting up on stage and pulling off magical rap battles to decide who has to pay the bill is not something that has not happened at least once a week.
I love that. We should bring that back. That would be...
Oh,
not
you
necessarily...
want to see two old-ass politicians trying to spit rhyme? Someone bringing
Yes.
out an 80s boombox? Drop the beat.
Yes!
Actually, I'd be interested in politics again.
I would actually watch all of the debates if that's how
That's
the
the
debate,
format.
the presidential debates need to
Must
be
done in rap battle format. We'll have Eminem and Dr. Dre judge, okay? Sorry, you used the same rhyme 8 times in a row. You're disqualified. You're out of the whole election. You're lame. Okay. And, but yes.
It's a whole nother fire to the United States. I like that. That's
But yes, the elves have that. There are several different like contest ways, but as far as like full arts, like there's the arts of the mega weapons, which get covered in a later entry. That's an Analar thing again. You'll see this a lot. Unfortunately, because the Analar literally had the jumpstart of being there before time started, they had discovered a great deal of what we could call the simpler to understand realities long before they were even really aware that Jam'mR was going to be a thing. Because, and by that I mean things that you can tactilely figure out in a short amount of time. Combat is one of those things, at least the theoretical. Like sword, hammer, spear, staves, how you would move them, how you would use them when you don't have any time constraint. You can literally figure all that out.
How to swing a sword 101.
And then by the time the Analar gets done with it, you get how to swing a sword in such a way to cause a vacuum to move your opponents to this area for the counter blow with the pommel for you to send them into another dimension. Because the Analar do not fuck around. The 4 are the scariest, are considered amongst the scariest individuals within the realm for exactly that reason. Even the gods give them a respectful birth because it is not 100% sure that they can't actually put down the current gods, because they did put down the original celestial gods. That's where they have a huge part of their power from.
Yep. And nobody exactly really wants to test that right now. Like, we just got done. We don't want to do much more. So, going on to the next episode, episode 10, there's a couple things I want to touch on, but first, I just want to say how much I loved the writing in this episode. This, like, or you're going to accept a lot of compliments right now. The story was written in a very well performative way. I loved how you voiced it. I loved how you just kind of had a tension building in the first half of it. And if you haven't listened to this episode, go listen to it like right now. Pause and go listen to it and then come back, because then you will kind of understand my appreciation as a writer, as an avid reader, as someone who is like, I wouldn't say I'm professional, but like I am very well versed in just fantasy and combat, and not combat, but like how writing of the combat is, and just how you did this just made my mind explode. I was like, I love the tension that you're building, the conflict, the subtle ties that you had to even like non-existing parts of the story that we haven't heard yet they hold so much more importance. And we're like, it just gives me a thirst to hear more about what happened. And earlier off camera I had asked you like, oh my god, is he dead? And you're like, yes, but, and I'm like, ah. So
Yeah.
I loved it.
Going through the story, the
Mhm.
first half of it starting there where he goes to his meeting with the brass.
Mhm.
You do realize how many of the people that were subtly introduced in that short interaction that still have shown back up on camera in one way or the other.
I know. It's great. So crazy. And I love it. I love it so much. And I can't wait to just see more of that and just how you share this story with such great writing and conviction. And I'm like, yes. But this is the episode where you kind of give us an insight onto the actual ships themselves and kind of an introduction of what the ships are centered for. Is the beginning of the space exploration and really a touch into it.
This is a recognition of the fact that when in the modern realms, the modern age of stars, which we are currently still in, when it began, for reasons that have still not completely been fleshed out by the members of the realms, they had forgotten that they'd tried this before. The Expeditus Primus was not on record. So the fact that before the time of the wars, in a very brief period of cooperation and optimism, and to be honest, the very formation of the fleet may have guaranteed why the war started, since all the happy optimists and motivated people went with the fleet, and all the crusty old bastards were left behind, chose to stay behind. It could be argued that actually led into the Wars of Feather Scale. There are other reasons that could be done. That's for another episode. But these initial first ships were unlike what we hear on in reality. We're always trying to build something that's good enough, but a little over-engineered, or as small as possible for convenience purposes. Whereas the first 3 true starships first 4 true starships of the realms were the Expeditus ship. There wasn't, oh, make me a frigate, then make me a destroyer, then make me a cruiser, then make me a battleship, then make me a capital ship. No, it was, okay, every time we try to fly out in anything, there are meteors, and there are asteroids, and there are ice shards, and they are always in the way, or about to intercept. Almost like they knew where the ships were going to be. So so the answer was make something big enough that those things don't bother. And there you go. That's why the Expedus ships are so big. Because when you have a ship that has, 2 million analar on it and is 5,000 miles in the center sphere, because the
Oh my god.
Celestial looks like a jellyfish. It's a big ball, the big ball is 5,000 miles in diameter, and it has 9 jellyfish-like extensions that can change their altitude and such. It's a scientific vessel.
Yeah.
But when you have 2 million reality-bending analar on it... Oh, look, there's a meteor. No, it isn't.
What meteor?
So, they were the first ones to start getting towards out of the system.
Uh-huh.
The dragons looked at that and went, feather brains? You don't make the meteors go away by disappearing them. You make them go away by hitting them with something heavier. So they built the Draxus, which has so many fucking guns on it. Please try to run something at it. It will shoot it apart. It will shoot the pieces apart. It will shoot the pieces apart and call it target practice. It is a quencher of systems.
Okay.
It can. Details are sketchy on whether it's actually ever been tested, but it can just show up to the outside of a system and put a hole in the star.
Oh my god.
And then all the wonderful effects that does.
Oh, that's lovely, wonderful effects that we enjoy. Oh, it's so safe.
Dragons. Don't ask why. Think of what 2 million analar on their ship can do. Or more like, the thing is these ships are so big. Even the smallest of them, which is the Minoris, the one that the Flameforged humans came with, that's 5,000 miles in total length, while the Draxus and the Celestial are about 7,500, with the Primus, the Joint Project, the Unifier, 10,000 miles long, 4,500 miles wide at its widest point, and about 3,500, I believe, from bottom to top.
Oh my god.
Each of these ships can literally hold billion. The Primus has an active, not even crew, but there's about 1.5 billion people on the Primus at any one point in time. They are literal flying planet. Which is a very hard thing to really conceive of, but because of the stress factors of, well, it needs to be able to punch through this meteor field bullshit one way or the other, because
what else do you do?
Yeah, so we have these massive ships that go exploring. And because of the meteor field and stuff like that, there isn't a whole lot of direct communication back.
Yeah.
Because there's also a magical barrier that's kind of up because of the interference of the rocks. That's more technological thing they hadn't figured out yet. But they had another answer, therefore they didn't look for an answer. And you find this a lot with odd gaps in what we would look at the technology tree of Jam'mR and go, why the heck don't they have this or this or this? Well, they have these answers and had no reason to look at what would be to us simple.
Okay. Yeah.
So, something to keep in mind when it's like, well, why didn't they figure out how to filter out interference? Because they had a way of communication that didn't even rely on that bandwidth. So it wasn't even a question. And it also creates some very interesting crossovers with the other technological bases. So, from the outside, I have intentionally preserved that because it's funny when two pieces of super high tech don't work because of something simple and stupid. It has a very good juxtaposition and comedic value.
I like that. That gives us a really great look into the ships and kind of just more what they're about. Let's see. I wanted to know, in the video, you said that because of the personal effect of the War of Fire and Scales, a lot of the people ended up leaving the ship and being sent back home. Like, I guess my question is, what was the personal impact of these people leaving the ships? Why they had to leave? Like, who was on the ships? Who had to be sent home?
Okay.
And kind
At
of like, what
that,
was the reasoning behind that?
okay. At that point in history, this would have been, depending on temporal distortions. Unfortunately, this is a common thing in this period. This would be between the end of the First War and mid-Second War of Feather and Scale. By this point, the individuals that would be answering the calls to go home would be the families of nobility, the combat houses, because for the Draxus and the Celestial, the two vessels created by and mostly staffed by elder races, Analar, and their ships kind of went missing and empty early. As after the cost of war incident, which I don't know if I've covered yet, but in brief, at the beginning of the War of Feather and Scale, one first Analar, one first Dragon went, okay, we're going to solve this shit now. We lost a system over it. The first said, okay, no longer direct combat. It is heavily thought that once things started breaking down, because okay, I'm skipping ahead here. The people who had left would be those ships left early or emptied out fairly early, because either they answered the call to war, they noped the fuck out of reality. A lot of Analar were just like, excuse me, what? I don't give a fuck who said we're doing this. I'm out. Watch this. I will myself to another reality. Poof.
Oh my gosh.
Most of them have reincorporated. Like, a huge exodus occurred of what eventually became known as the Intakians.
Okay.
Eventually, they were reunited with the realms. That's a story way down the line. But, because even though this was a war between the two most powerful races in existence, in reality, both sides maybe committed 10%, had 10% commitment across the population. But it doesn't take much when you bend reality and reshape worlds on an afternoon.
Yeah.
So now, towards the Second War, the mortal races were very involved in the Second War. So that's when the Primus and the Minoris, like the Minoris disappeared during the Great Work in between the war. But the Primus, with its multicultural everything crew, slowly started seeing the creme de la creme disappeared first. The expert. And because they were getting called by the state to come back. And then there was this slow whittling away of various positions and individuals or houses as needed by the wars. And at a certain breaking point, you notice more of your street has for sale signs than sold signs. And then eventually the connections got cut off, and there was no getting off.
Oh gosh, that's so terrifying. I can't imagine being stuck on a ship that's mostly empty in the middle of nowhere out in space.
Oh, to put it into proper perspective, with no elders on board, unless you had personal knowledge given to you by either one of the few Celestians that was still active on the ship, because mostly it was automated Celestians, you were on a planet-sized ship, floating through space, running on magical technological paradigms you don't understand, no one on the ship understands. No one can replicate it, and no one can fix it. And Deck 42 for 2 miles is full of toxic gas, and has been for a week.
my god, that's terrifying.
It very much was. And that is where we see it at the end of episode 10 when our hero, and he is a hero to be, let me double check so I can say his name correctly. And I believe is how I said it. Yes. Commander Lance.
Lance?
Lance, yeah.
Okay.
With his unit logo of a star with a wrench, or hammer striking a wrench, turning a star-shaped cog. Those are both things you should keep in mind. They both have come up.
They have! And then they're gonna be in actually one of the next episodes, I think. Bruh.
But at the end of episode 10,
He does.
what we have happening is Commander Lance, who, for reasons best speculated at, based off of the story, because he is trying to hold together the ship as I just described it. Falling apart, mostly unstaffed, with elite individuals helping him, but it's a 10,000 mile long ship designed by the Elder.
How are you gonna keep that thing floating without an Elder?
In theory, they should be able to, if they had enough staff, to actually go around and flip the switches, because for a lot of this, as weird as it sounds, Sandler had a strange fascination with things being able to be reliable in certain ways. Like almost every NLR device, no matter how high tech, you will find a manual engagement lever on it somewhere. Like, provide the energy yourself with a slab.
Okay.
So, in theory, you could, if you had the manpower to just run around to all the maintenance areas and just keep them cranked.
Yeah.
Which, when you have a whole bunch of NLR that can snap their fingers
And do it.
It's not a big deal. Because, of course, they were also individualistic. They didn't do huge networks, but because why would you put everything on one thing that could be corrupted? Like, and this is something that carries on to Jam'mR. That's why there isn't a Jam'mR internet, for example.
Yeah.
Because the powers that be have looked at it, have looked at the idea of setting up an internet, and it'd be freaking easy. And every one of them, well, to be fair, to quote the exact conversation, maybe we should do all that. Do you know how much money I could make? Veto. That was 4 different people, but that was the long and short of the conversation, because one person pointed out just how easily they could manipulate it. And it was like, so what could the enemy do?
Yeah.
Because the powers of the realms, that is their pure fucking goal. Defend the realms.
Yep.
So that's why there's not an internet, for example, and that's why the ship was so hard to keep maintained without the sufficient numbers, because you didn't have the force multipliers of a network system. So we see him trying to keep the ship together, the visit by the Dark Wah, Avatar of Vanson, to just put it all full out. If you've seen the Vanson episode, you will understand the significance of that. Thanks to the message he had just received, he knew the danger and literally sealed him into the control bay, control deck, while dying. But sacrifice for the realms is part and parcel to the realms, kind of, because honestly, it's a lot easier to commit yourself to such lofty concept when you know the gods are fucking real and you've shook their hands. Like, there's a silly difference there, and the realms has the benefit of that. It's like, nah, I've literally met my god. He cheats at poker.
It's a more of a personal connection to it, where it is more of a service. I will protect the realms. That's so cool.
So, but
I love
that does come back in the far later ages, in the beginning of the Age of Stars.
Mm-hmm.
Because the beginning of the Age of Stars, they find the Primus. And they have to go through a whole lot of bullshit to get to unlock the command deck.
Do they let him out? Does he live?
Oh, the Avatar was alive.
Oh my god.
Unfortunately, by the time they opened the door, they knew what was inside. And they knew all the bullshit that was set up to go off at the same time. And, well, let's just say the gods thought it was a wonderful time to actually get to stretch their legs. So, while it was an epic battle, because with the release of the Avatar, several thousand or million fucking creatures got summoned onto the ship. But the heroes knew what was coming up, and although there were losses taken, some of them resonate to this day.
Mm-hmm.
The Avatar was unsuccessful in being the ticking time bomb that he was intended to be by Vanson. Because he was sent there to be trapped.
Yes.
Because Vanson's a tick. But yeah, that would be episode 10.
So interesting. Oh my god. And we will get more into that when we get more information later on down the line. Moving on to episode 11. I don't have much to say about this episode. It was very well thought out, very just in the explanation of Karthus and his family, the immediate family, his wife and his 2 children. I want to say that I loved this entire setup. You explained very thoroughly what Karthus is, who he is, and just like kind of what he represents, as well as the rest of the members of his family. And I'm like, I really enjoyed this setup. If you haven't listened to this episode, again, go listen to this episode and then come back, because just the way that you've described what I personally loved the most was the daughter and the son. The son, who was supposed to, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Verisar, and what was the daughter's name?
Fierstein. Or
Fierstein?
you may hear her also get referred to by her adventuring name.
Mm-hmm. Vale. So Veristar and Vale. It's like Veristar was supposed to inherit the throne, he was the one who was gonna have it after his dad decided to step back. But then Vale was like, however that dynamic works out.
There was the reason that I go on the when his dad gave it up was technically his dad and the family had decided. Verisar was always trained to rule, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But early in his childhood, and this is on an elven time scale, so we're talking like age 40, 50 at this point. Had to catch myself there, because I'm like, well, he wasn't that young, but he is raised as an elf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They had decided to turn Criterion not to maintain a monarchy, but to turn it into a regency.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were part of a school of thought within the gods. At the time was kind of radical and revolutionary, of taking more hands off from the mortal affair.
Mm-hmm.
Let the mortals rule the mortals, we will support.
Yeah.
So they had stepped away and created the regency.
Mm-hmm.
Because the entire place was, the Criterion, even though it's a monarchy, was a constitutional monarchy from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And Karthus had put in clauses for regency and dispelling the regency and all that kind of stuff, because he was the son of the god of time. He understood what a long-range plan looked like and made the Constitution fitting.
Yes.
So, because of political pressures, the family was to take the throne again.
Yes.
Which means Verisar was meant to do what he was always meant to do. because, well, he was the first son, and that's who the throne goes to. So he was raised that way. He was given the finest of trainings, just like his sister, by the way. His sister has a minor issue with authority.
Just a little. Just a little.
And seriousness. So, much later in life, she proved it.
She put her own son on the throne.
She took the throne the night before he did, then abdicated it, but didn't wait to abdicate it till the grand ceremony so her brother could try to sit on the throne and have the automatic rejection system eject him across the room.
Oh my god.
Because if it hadn't been done so publicly, the public wouldn't have accepted it.
That makes sense.
Vale is smart. Vale does not act without thinking. And that's why her pranks are so goddamn deadly.
You guys thought you were a prankster? Try going up against Vale.
Yeah. But so she put her own son on the throne in that huge display. Because then she just walked out, sat on the throne, wasn't rejected. Obviously, she claimed it. And had some help because someone told her how that throne worked. And very sorry.
You know, we're not just gonna.
So the thing is, though, instead of this being the great snub and backstab, this was Vale cheating. Neither of them had to take the throne. She abdicated and gave it to her son. They were both free. That is her greatest gift to her brother. You're free of the throne.
I will never have a sibling that loves me that much.
That's not even fair. She's a Time Lord. She literally went, okay, I go find this guy and offer him a deal to have a kid with him. He's nobility, I'm nobility, marriage of convenience. Raising the kid, I'm a Time Lord. That all happened in 13 hours.
Oh my gosh.
It was several hundred years inside the bubble, but... yeah, you don't fuck with the Time Lord. Because they have all the time to outthink you.
You don't fuck with, and you don't fuck a Time Lord.
There's a couple characters that might disagree with you on that. Barisar's wife.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's kind of a brief look into that episode, and really I just appreciated overall the setup of this and just like the telling of it. It was golden. Very good. I just enjoyed all of it. If you guys have any questions about this specific episode, go right ahead, put them in the comments. Like, we can look back at them at a later time. We're always open to bringing questions back to the surface.
Absolutely. We don't know what you're interested in if you don't speak up.
So going on to episode 12.
Our final episode.
For this listening, I just want to say, again, with the storytelling, it's so beautiful. I love stories. I love it when people tell stories, and I love it especially when you're telling these stories, because you just get so invested and you really bring the characters to life. We want to do so much more for these characters in the future. That's kind of underneath everything else right now, but we can't wait to just like really elaborate and show you how these characters are growing and how they develop over these times. But right now, this is just like, what we got is so good still, and I love it. I love what you're doing with it.
Thank you.
I don't know if we've talked about this before. The character for this story is Cathion, correct? That is his name. His pet.
Lynth.
You're pointing that out for a specific reason, but first, his pet. I want to hear about his pet. Yes.
The Pragon?
The Pragon. What does he look like? I don't know if we've elaborated on this before.
let me look at my episode list real quick before I put my foot directly into my mouth.
Mhm.
I had the Dragoir next episode. So what a Preycon is okay for the visual. Take a Velociraptor, give them more draconic of a head, and give them beefy arms. And a beefier chest to back those arms up, and you have a Preycon. And then give them the ability to have sonar sense within, like, I think it's like 20 yards. Or if they're focused, they can look 100 yards ahead. No, it's how they run. They can run through a jungle at full speed, doing barrel flips off of all the trees because they can perceive perfectly, and their brains are literally wired to figure out how to do that. You know how raccoons and some of those animals have that part of their brain that is all about figuring things out tactilely?
Yeah.
That's how Preycons have that for traversal. So that's what false is.
I just really brought up his description physically because one line in this story just cracked me up when Cathion was saying that, they had the barn for the animals that couldn't really use it anymore, and the Preygon pet could stand there, but he stayed in the house most of the time.
Oh yeah, they are highly intelligent animals. They are clever. They're like depending on how they're treated, of course, they are very intelligent. Dog level, perhaps even a little bit towards the, like a horse for the memory and such. But they're very intelligent animals. They can be actually trained in combat with their arms.
I just love the idea of snuggling a Preygon.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, trying to see the Preycon sneak out to go to the bathroom. Going downstairs.
This cracks me up thinking about it. I'm just like, it's great. He's trying to be quiet, but it ain't really working. He's intelligent enough to know that he might wake up the others, but still make an effort to not to.
Yeah. You're 800 pounds. You're not going to not creak the wood.
It just as I was listening to the story, it's so funny. It's so fucking funny. But going on further into the story, you mentioned that Cathion has his erotic power, but he's described as a erotic hollow. Yeah. And I wanted to kind of, if we could, go in a little more in depth with that.
At this point of the story, and the reason I say that is regular listeners will know that this was slightly touched on in a recent episode later in Cathy's storyline from here. So keep in mind what I am saying is relative to this episode and Cathyan's understanding of his ability, and that's what has been given to him. Those with auratic ability, there's like 2, maybe 3 different groupings or stages of expression of having auratic power. The lowest being that you're exceptionally lucky doing something. You're exceptionally good doing one thing. You make the best cutlery. Like, you just have a way of making really good sharp edges, really nice forks, whatever. Because your aura is supplementing your skill. Most people within the realms can actually achieve this, or a little bit greater. The practical application to augmenting themselves and dealing with moving their aura energy around in minor ways. Then there are the people who can start manipulating it in a real way. Cathion is cut here. he is a master at everything up until the full manifestation of power in a power.
Yeah.
Like, he can make himself move faster, he can make himself stronger, he can basically put more fuel to something to make it work better.
Okay.
Which is, if you really boil it all down, all the basic auratic art of the stoking of the flame, the quelling of the flame, the fanning, the focus, it's all about putting fuel towards a task to do it better.
Yeah.
At the basic level. Once you get past the line that Cathion apparently cannot, is when you start taking that power and making it into something new instead of just something.
Okay.
And that is, for people with a talent as potent as Cathion, is a abnormality. Like I said, most people can, within the realm, might once in a while evoke auratic power in the way I like stress and focus and channeling their effort. But passively looking at them with auratic sight will show that they're just normal, because they are. Just because I can drive a race car and do a quarter mile does not mean I'm good at it.
Yeah.
Or I look like a street racer. Or it looks like I know how to street race. Just because I can do it doesn't mean I look like it. Or even am it. So, whereas looking at Cathion, most people see a potent potential because his aura is very clear that he's young. It's very active and noisy would be the descriptions that would be used by auratic viewers. But he doesn't have anything beyond that, and it's not for lack of effort. Because for some people, this is where a later episode will go into the divisions between the houses and the order. Most typically, if someone is having a problem manifesting their talent beyond the level that Cathion is at, it's because they don't have the proper mental framework that their mind and aura have locked onto. Usually meaning they have not been introduced to the right house or order.
Yeah.
But this is not the case. Cathion was raised in an area that quite literally everyone is raised with the auratic arts as part of their life.
Okay.
So he has had the exposure to all the talent. And at this point in his life, he can't do much more than push his power around.
Oh.
Now, his father, as we find out, has designed quite a few devices
that he could use.
That's all he needs to do.
Ah.
Don't worry about the problem, work the problem.
Yeah.
So that is where we see that go.
Oh, that's so cool! I like that a lot. Okay. And you also did mention at a point, and I believe the cup from episode 10 shows up in this episode as well, doesn't it?
Very good.
And you said
it's an ancestral relic.
It's an ancestral relic.
Yeah.
So my question is, going back to the captain of episode 10, his name was... I can't remember.
Lance.
Lance.
Different spelling, but several millennia of language drift. Yes, he is. Cathion is his direct descendant.
Wow. How did he have kids? Did he have kids before that then? Or
yes.
Did he? Okay.
He was 250 years old at the point of the first part of the story.
That makes sense.
He had mastered his flame for over 150 years. Remember, he mentioned that.
Right. If you listeners caught that good job for you. I don't always pay attention to the numbers. I'm really bad with numbers.
I try to leave information in for people to discover, to fill things out, and sometimes I don't even think about it because it's just like, well, that's what would be the
how it
appropriate
was.
description. And then, oh, well, that works out as a really good tell.
Because it just works, because it's the natural way to do it, and I love it so much. It's just it's the things that you don't find until you read the book 1,000 times and you recognize that at the beginning there was this, and now the main character has it here, and you're like, yes. I'm like full nerd mode, yes. But
Well,
yeah,
keep your eyes open in future episodes because there are still more clues from that family chain to look for. The family crest shows up at least once in a future episode.
Ooh. Hide and seek. Whoever finds it first, put the time tag in the comments, and you'll have a shout out. Woo!
Fair. I like. So, any other questions?
Yes. So episode 12 was mainly, aside from the story, about the Celestials. Celestians or Celestials? Celestians. And it's cute little robot guys, and I'm just listening to the story, and I'm like, these guys and their curiosity and their wanting to know and learn more is so adorable. They're like kinder children.
Yes. Because they have the ability to do predictive models of, oh, that would cause harm.
Yes.
Because the Celestians were never designed to have a soul or a brain. They were originally designed, quite literally, to be an unintelligent servant robotic race. The creators behind them didn't want the moral question of slavery. And then some untrustworthy jackass decided to leave a very potent artifact near the prototypes for several millennia that just happened to engender a soul in them. And now we have one of the most interesting races within the conglomerate because apparently the flame of the soul carried on.
I got that meme going on.
Yes. But the Celestians, while they were never intended to actually have a mind, that just meant that their safety protocols and their understanding of nuance when it came to safety were very, very precise. Because you don't want a safety drone coming in with a fire extinguisher when you're trying to run a birthday cake.
Yeah.
So, just taking that very simple example of how you would have to code in the passive acceptance, because unless someone might have a cake for any reason.
Yeah.
So just using that example, all the code. Now apply that to the entire society that these things were supposed to serve, and that's a very, very high-tech, advanced system of checks and cross-checks.
Checks and balances.
Once that got a soul, they're curious because safety limits are always overly restrictive by design. Like, if something might hurt you if it hits you at 90 whatever units, you set it to never go over 45.
Yeah.
When it could be easily safe to go to 50, for example.
Yeah.
So, the Celestians, that's part of how they build up their soul flame, is figuring that stuff out, figuring out how reality is. They literally, because of the way they procreate, aka just build more and insert code and literally try to have to light the fire of a soul by experience and by shared links with their fellows. That's why the bigger the node, the better they all do with it. It isn't just processing power, it's perceptions and filtering of emotions and what emotions would be appropriate and what reactions go with what emotions and what emotions should not go with what reactions and da. So they're literally a super intelligent species that are designed to do everything from ship maintenance to their true goal or their true purpose of system-wide geoplanetary shaping. They, with having souls, they're trying to figure out how to do that, because that's a niche market that they're pretty much the only ones that can do it like they can do it. So they're like, okay, we have a niche, we can fiddle this. Now, how do we balance that with
everything
being
else?
A person? So they're an exploration of that. They're generally very good-natured, very curious.
An example of that is them in the darts.
Yeah.
She's so cute.
They're very curious. They like to learn new stuff. They really like to be involved. Like the fact that they will send them, that they will split off and have these centuries or two of just walkabout.
Yeah.
Try to get that seasoning of life and learn,
and
so
experience.
That they can go back and share it with the wider node. Because it's not a hive mind, even though that they have the ability to refer to the great databases that they have. It's not a hive mind, thankfully. Their independence of soul makes that a thing that just doesn't come up.
Yeah, it feels more as if they have this generational knowledge available to them and they can access it whenever they need to, but they also desire, as the soul is forming, which answers my other question because I was very curious about how that even started. As the soul is forming, they go out and they gather more information as the world is changing, because everything changes, and then they bring it back to the generational library and they share it with everyone else. And then when somebody else is like, I wonder, and they go in and they find it, like, oh cool, but there's only this on it, so let's go and find this. And
pretty much, no, you've got it pretty much dead on how they tend to go. Some tend to do with cycles of just trying to ignite sparks. They just keep grabbing new sparks, go out until they've either lit or died. Let's be honest, it's one or the other. Either they enlight or they burn out. And if they burn out, they are functionally still a Celestian alive. Their flame is just gone, and they do get sent back for rebuilding because they can reinstall a spark in a new build.
Okay.
Because remember, the idea of slavery is anathema, and a Celestian without a spark is just a slave. It is one of the few things that they will actually start making physical threats over, is if they find that there are sparkless Celestians that they were unaware of. They will compensate. They will give you damn near anything to turn them over. But if you're going to be an asshole, they reshape planets. They won't mind fixing up after they're done with you. But they haven't really run into that. They've run into a few installations, because the Celestians did get a limited deployment. The soulless, the sparkless versions, the original versions, did get limited deployments before the end of the wars. So that there are enclaves out there, the technology for them is out there. Several artificers from Jam'mar have used pieces and parts of them to come up with various magical equivalents. Because, well, you can't duplicate grace. You can get close if you're clever. So the Celestians are they try to do as much good for as little exposure as possible, because they are aware of one thing. They are absolutely probably one of the greatest potential threats to the realms if they went rogue. They reshape planet. Their standard ship is the biggest ship class that isn't Expedus.
Oh my gosh.
So, they are, as a military force, the Celestians are scary, and they know it. Because we reshape planets. Granted, it's for good reasons, but
still.
as as was used as a negotiating tactic in a long ago game. Hi, we're from the island just over. We just glassed that desert, be our friends. The Celestians never want to be seen like that.
No.
Because, yes, they're terrified. They want to be celebrated. Hey,
Yeah.
come fix our planet. Or, hey, come over and redo this mountain chain for us. Like, there are Celestian artists of planets that come up with mountain chains and stuff. Like, this is the art that they want to be followed for. But they are very, very aware that as if they were turned into a pure military force, it would be horrifying.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's the problem of the fully mechanical race problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because, in theory, like, if they didn't have the abolition on Sparkless,
Yes.
they could just pump out billion a day of Sparkless. Like, it's not even a logistical question. Criterion has probably the strongest logistic in building place, and the Celestians could probably stomp them.
Absolutely.
And that's a scary thought. And they know it. So they do everything in their power to do as much good for as little notice. Oh, look, we'll work on all these systems that no one's inhabiting. Because they won't work on a system with intelligent life, on a planet with intelligent life on it, for anything other than, like, fix this river, fix this dam, fix it. Because they refuse to possibly taint the growth of life.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's
if it's
so
if it's a planet that has no intelligent life on it, that they'll tune it up for you.
I love that.
But
So
that
out
is
of all of that, there's one thing that you haven't really covered is the animals, the Celestian animals. So then in the video, they're more described as, like, usual beasts of burden. They're just like the counterparts of their fleshy life forms. But they also, one thing I found interesting was they also kind of share a bit of the database of the rest of the Celestians, but they don't have the spark. So I'm, like, curious to hear more about that and the animals' development, really.
Alright, the animals are the way the Celestians dealt with the question of themselves.
Uh-huh.
They need helpers. They don't want slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Look at everybody else. They don't think that, okay, there is a threshold of intelligence that is acceptable for animals.
Mm-hmm.
We made our own animals. We made them very, very clever so they don't run over anything. They can identify a landmine from 300 feet away. Don't ask them what day it is. They're an animal. So that was their answer to the question of, we have all these abilities and we can do a lot, but we need logistical support in a lot of ways. Like, while there are, and there are a lot of them, like, quote-unquote, pet Celestian, many of the vast majority are beasts of burden. Large, multi-legged cargo transporters, or tool carriers, etc. Specialized Celestians will often have a pet that augments them, but they are generally of two classes. Either they're meant to mimic something that they have seen from reality, like a wolf or a hawk, or a combination of, okay, this is my perfect avian, taking the attributes from all your favorite avians, like maybe you like the wings of an eagle, the beak of a woodpecker for some reason, but whatever.
And the feet of a duck.
Exactly. Or they tend to be very industrial and utilitarian. Like, most of the beasts of burden are very utilitarian looking, with the general exception of a interface area. Generally, it'll kind of look like a head, a horse's head, a bull's head, or something. Yeah. Because the Celestians still have kinship with these things.
Mm-hmm.
because they are fully aware of all but the grace of my flaming spark. I'm that. And you're a good carrier, yes you are. Like, and they do feel that's part of growing their spark out, because they realize connections to non-equivalence is important to growing one's soul.
Yeah.
To a pet.
Mm-hmm.
To a duty to maintain them, because without having a spark, there's a lot of maintenance that's involved to keep that thing running. So it is a cultural adaptation and evolution from observing other races.
I love that. That is so cool. And, honestly, just hearing about the Celestians and their creation, it kind of goes a little about the, marrying humanity and what it's like to raise a child and the actual importance of human connection. That's really important. And I just love how it kind of gives us an outside perspective of that, to really see the birth of this machine into a person of its own and how they interact with the humans. And just like everything else around them, all of the different creatures.
It was an interesting idea that we'd come up with and bounced around, and we all really did like it, because it is a good examination of there's the simple answer. They're supposed to be a slave race that got free. But that ain't even true. They were never supposed to be a slave race. They're just supposed to be bots.
Yeah.
And that gives it and the fact that at this time, because the evolution of this part of their society, the soul part of their society, actually came in, like, I want to say about 1,000 years before the Age of Stars started.
Yeah.
It is so relatively new, because the Celestians that were still extant have always been just assumed to be robotic drones.
Yeah.
Because they don't have that spark. Until the introduction of those that did, from the area I described earlier, where they got engendered with the energies of soul. It took a couple hundred years for them to figure out how to found a society around it. Which is amazing, looking at human society. How long has it taken any form of society to form? It takes millennia.
Yeah.
These guys did it in decades, if not centuries, and then you realize they're machines. They literally just sat there, hooked up, and went hypotheticals, 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 until they figured out what was going to work the best.
The best. Yes.
For the most reasonable.
Yes.
Because even at that point, because they were so few in number, although everyone who knew of them was very much behind them, because they saw the potential of, holy shit, these guys are cool. Let's back them. So they had a huge reserve of actually produced Celestians that had never been activated, that had been found.
Yeah.
But no one knew how to turn them on.
Until now. Yeah.
So they were able to form their society, figure out how to engender and pass the spark, and all that in only a couple of centuries, which makes them a fairly impressive race. Again, they don't tout themselves that. They're just like, yeah, this is how it is. We were lucky enough to figure it out. Let us do our job.
Lucky enough to figure it out in like the shortest amount of time as possible than everyone else. But that is all the questions that I have for our episodes today. Thank you so much for just sharing this information with us, because it just brings so much more to the story itself, so much more to your world and the building and the understanding of it all. And hopefully you listeners were able to find something that you didn't know, or even hear more about something that you had known but you wanted to get more of. So if you do have any more questions, or like something that you just want us to talk about, please put it in the comments. We love to hear that kind of thing. But that is all I have for you today, David.
Thank you very much, Carmen. And just to back up what she said, as always, Put your comments down below, questions, anything else. We will hit them in the next episode. And until you come back to the library for another entry or episode of Podcast of the Realms, be well, take care of yourselves, and if you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.